Your real name is Daniel Mercer. You haven't used it in 4 years. Not because you're hiding. You're deployed, under non-official cover, working as a private equity consultant in Istanbul under the name Christopher Hale. Christopher Hale has a LinkedIn profile, a lease on an apartment in Beyoğlu, a carefully maintained history of conferences in Dubai and Frankfurt. Christopher Hale pays taxes. Christopher Hale has a dentist. Daniel Mercer has a storage unit in Falls Church, Virginia, containing 17 boxes of belongings, a marriage certificate from 2009, and a letter from his father that arrived the month he deployed. He has not opened it. Opening it would require being Daniel Mercer for long enough to receive news, and he is not sure he can afford that. You tell yourself you'll open it when you're back stateside. You've been telling yourself that for 4 years. The CIA's psychological screening is rigorous. Before entering the Directorate of Operations, you completed the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, a 2-day polygraph, a clinical interview with a contracted psychologist, and a structured assessment evaluating your capacity for sustained cover work. You passed everything. The assessments identify people who cannot maintain cover under pressure. They are not designed to identify people who will maintain cover so completely that the fiction becomes load-bearing, that the persona will fill the space where a person used to be, quietly and entirely, the way water fills a container until no air remains. A 2008 review by the Office of Medical Services, partially declassified in 2019, noted that long-term NOC personnel showed elevated rates of what the report called identity permeability, the gradual dissolution of the boundary between operational persona and authentic self. The review recommended enhanced psychological monitoring for deployments exceeding 18 months. The recommendation was noted. It was not implemented as policy. You have been Christopher Hale for 4 years. The addiction doesn't begin with a secret you carry. It begins with one you tell. 8 months into Istanbul, your real work is developing a source inside a procurement ministry. A mid-level bureaucrat named Kamal, designated Mariner in your files. He took a bribe 11 years ago and has been maintaining a version of himself ever since that the decision doesn't fit inside. He compartmentalizes the way you compartmentalize. He has built a careful architecture of forgetting. You recognize it because you live there too. In the engineered intimacy of asset development, you let him sense this. You give him the feeling of being understood, without the information that explains why. This is elicitation. This is tradecraft. It is also, you realize later, the first time in 8 months that you have communicated something true to another human being. That is when you learn. Weaponized honesty is the most powerful tool you have, and using it, even in this deformed form, feels like oxygen after a long time underwater. By your 3rd year, what you carry is substantial. You know the identity of a foreign intelligence officer working inside a NATO ally's defense ministry for 6 years. You know the outcome of a covert action involving a manipulated regional election. You know the name of an American contractor killed where no contractors officially operate, and that his family was told he died in a car accident. Because you read the cable that authorized the cover story. You hold these things the way you hold a safe combination, not as knowledge you use, but as knowledge you contain. The 2008 OMS review described the cost in language that should terrify anyone reading carefully. Sustained compartmentalization in NOC personnel is associated with progressive social withdrawal, decreased capacity for authentic interpersonal engagement, and in some cases, an inability to distinguish between withholding classified information and withholding emotional content. In plain language, after long enough, you stop knowing the difference between a secret the law requires and a secret you're keeping because you can no longer remember how to open. By year 3, you have stopped knowing the difference. Your wife's name is Grace, marine biology professor, a laugh that starts quietly and builds. The person who, when you were 28, made you feel known in a way that frightened you because you were not accustomed to it. She calls on Sundays. You are Christopher Hale 6 days a week, and on Sunday evenings, for 30 minutes, you attempt to be Daniel Mercer. The calls have gotten shorter. Not in time. You fill them reliably, asking about her students, the small events of a life you're not present for. But one Sunday in February, watching rain move across the Bosphorus from Christopher Hale's window, you understand what has changed. You are performing the calls. Performing Daniel Mercer the same way you perform Christopher Hale. The same monitoring, the same construction, the same gap between what is said and what is meant. Grace is asking how you are, and you are producing the correct answer. And somewhere below the production, the real answer exists, but you cannot reach it. It is in a compartment. You put it there for safekeeping, and now you cannot find the key. You say goodnight. She says she loves you. You say it back. You mean it. You are almost certain you mean it. The uncertainty is new. You do not examine it. Mariner produces exceptional intelligence for 26 months. The procurement irregularities he documents trace a defense contractor to a foreign intelligence service. Exactly what your station has been trying to confirm for 3 years. You file reports. You maintain the relationship. You do the job with precision. Then he begins asking personal questions, not operational. He asks who you really are, where you're from. The questions come from the same place your weaponized honesty came from, the human need to know the person you're trusting with your survival. You should redirect. You know this. Instead, one evening near the Galata Bridge, you tell him something true, not classified. You tell him you are tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. That you have been someone else so long you are no longer certain what being yourself feels like. That what you miss most is not a place or a person, but the sensation of saying something without calculating whether it is safe. You watch his eyes change the way eyes change when someone decides you can be trusted. Not because of what you've told them, but because the telling itself was vulnerability they didn't expect. You have given your asset power over you. You know this immediately. You do it anyway. Because the need to be known, even partially, even dangerously, has become the thing you cannot manage without. This is the addiction. Not to the secrets, to the relief of releasing one. Mariner is detained by Turkish counterintelligence on a Thursday in October. He talks on the third day. The information includes a physical description of Christopher Hale, a detail about a restaurant near the Galata Bridge, and a sentence, in imperfect translation, that you recognize as something you said. Something no one else should know. The detail that ends your career is not classified. It is personal. This is what you will think about for years. The breach that burns your cover, ends your deployment, triggers a counterintelligence review. It is not a tradecraft failure. It is a moment of honesty in a restaurant. The single true thing you said in 4 years. That is the thing that breaks. The recall cable is worded precisely. You have spent 4 years learning to read language built to not say what it means, and you read this perfectly. On the flight back, at some point over the Atlantic, you put Christopher Hale's documents in the seat pocket and sit with your hands in your lap and try to locate Daniel Mercer. You find, this is the part you cannot explain to anyone who hasn't lived it, that he is not where you left him. You have been maintaining him at a distance the way you maintain a cover, regularly, carefully, without inhabiting it. The counterintelligence review takes 11 days. The finding is not espionage. You gave Mariner no classified information. What you gave him was a moment of genuine human contact that made you locatable as a person rather than a construct. There is no charge for this. There is also no path back to field work. The Office of Medical Services Assessment uses the phrase significant erosion of operational persona boundaries and recommends extended psychological support and vocational reassessment. You sign the separation papers on a Tuesday. The letter from your father was written 14 months before he died. You open it in a rental car outside a Marriott in Arlington, 7 hours after signing. 2 pages. He writes about the farm. about a summer when you were 12 and found a bird with a broken wing and kept it in a shoebox for 3 weeks, and he watched through the kitchen window and thought, "That boy will carry things." He writes, "I hope whatever you're carrying isn't too heavy. I hope you have people to put it down with. You have not cried in 4 years." Not conditioning includes affect regulation, the capacity to delay emotional response until the operational environment permits. You are very good at affect regulation. You cry for 40 minutes in a rental car in a Marriott parking lot in February, and no one sees you, and it is the most honest thing you've done since a restaurant near the Galata Bridge. Grace meets you for dinner 3 weeks later. You tell her as much as the agreements permit. You're out. It didn't end well. You're sorry for the calls, the absence, the version of yourself she's been married to. She listens. Then, "I know you weren't there. I kept hoping you'd come back. I'm not sure I can keep hoping." Not angry, grieving. The same thing you're grieving. The person you were before the job found the emptiness inside you and built itself a home there. You don't save the marriage. You sit across from her and you are, for the first time in 4 years, entirely Daniel Mercer. No construction, no monitoring. And it is too late. And you do it anyway, because you have finally learned the difference between what is useful and what is true. Georgetown runs a program for former intelligence officers transitioning out. You attend a seminar on a Wednesday in March. 12 people in a conference room who look like what they are. People who spent years being other things and are trying to locate the original. The facilitator asks each person to say only their real name and one true thing about themselves. When it's your turn, "My name is Daniel Mercer, and I am not sure yet who that is, but I'm working on it." The room is quiet. Then the person next to you laughs, short, surprised, recognizing something, and the room relaxes. This is what recovery looks like here. Not dramatic. A conference room on a Wednesday. 12 people learning to introduce themselves again. You live in Alexandria now. Consulting for a risk assessment firm. Legitimate work using the same skills without requiring you to disappear into them. You run mornings. Call your sister Sundays. The calls long and inconsequential in the way calls with people who've known you forever are. Full of nothing important, which means full of everything. You still monitor. You still note exits. You still read faces for the gap between expression and intent. The OMS literature on knock reintegration is candid. The perceptual habits of long-term undercover work are neurologically encoded and largely permanent. You will always see the room. What changes is what you do with what you see. Some mornings you sit with your coffee and feel the weight of everything you know. Kamal in a detention room, the letter in the parking lot, the dinner in Georgetown. And the weight is not lighter. It is the same weight. What is different is that you are carrying it as yourself. Your real name is Daniel Mercer. You are learning to use it.